Hey there, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to explain how you can use news articles for language learning. So the first question you'll probably have is how to choose an article. Really, the best article to use is one that you find interesting. The reason being, if you find it interesting, you'll have intrinsic motivation to understand it. If you're intrinsically motivated, you won't have to work nearly as hard, or whatever work that you do won't feel so much like work because you're actually interested in the topic of the article. There are two main ways we can look for an article. If you're more advanced or you feel comfortable using publications in the target language you want to learn, just go to one of those publications and search for an article there. So for example, if you are learning English as your target language and you know you like the New York Times, you can just go to the New York Times and find an article there that looks interesting to you. If, say, you don't know the names of good publications or publications that you like in the target language, or you're more of an intermediate learner and maybe you still feel kind of intimidated going to those publications directly, or when you do go to them, you're just like, I don't know enough to pick one out, that's totally fine. What you can do instead is pick a topic in a publication in your native language that you find interesting. So if, say, you're Italian and you have certain publications that are written in Italian that you like, you can peruse those and find something that looks interesting to you from there, because most major publications around the world are writing stories about the same current events around the same time. So if you're looking at an Italian newspaper and there's something going on in, say, Japan that looks really interesting and you're trying to learn English, you'll probably find an article, almost guaranteed you'll find an article in English on that same topic. So then what you can do is just look up whatever the words are in English to describe that topic, and then search for it, and then something should come up in an English publication for it. So either one of these strategies is perfectly fine. The idea is that you should just find an article that looks interesting to you. Also, what I'll say is if you're a more advanced learner, you'll probably want to just start with the article in the target language. But if you're lower intermediate or intermediate and your comprehension might be kind of low or middle of the road in the target language, it's totally fine to read the article first in your native language, so that way you have the nuts and bolts of the story already under your belt. So that way when you get to the article in the target language, that's the language that you're learning, it should be much easier for you to understand it, and you can spend more time focusing on the language itself as opposed to trying to understand the story and the language simultaneously. Just know that eventually, as your language skills develop, you'll want to ease out of that approach and then start just in the target language. So that way your comprehension is coming from the language itself, not from your native language. But like I was saying before, as a process in the learning curve, it's totally fine to start in your native language and then move to the target language. No shame in that. So now that you've picked out your article, what I first want you to do is scan it. You're not reading it yet for comprehension. You're not even really reading. You're just scanning, and you're going to look for new vocabulary words. So this could be a word that you've never seen before, or it could be a word that you have seen before, but you're not sure you know what it means. Both of those should be considered a new vocabulary word for you. So if you have the article printed, you can underline these words on the page. If it's, say, on your phone, then what you can do is just make a list on a piece of paper or type it up of the words that will be new for you. And these will be considered your vocabulary words that are coming from this article. So before you even read the article, you'll make your vocab list and then you'll define the words. So if you have less time, or you're, say, a lower level student in terms of the learning of the language, you could write the word in your native language. That'll go super fast, okay? If you have more time and you're a more advanced learner, I would recommend that you write the definition of the word in your target language, because it'll give you more work to do and it will make this particular learning process more like you're actually integrated in the society and integrated in the language. So again, lower level students, or if you have less time, you could put the word in your native language. More advanced students, write out the full definition in the target language. Gives you more practice with it, okay? That's also not to say if you're a lower level student, you couldn't write the definition. It's just going to be more heavy lifting for you. So it's up to you what you really want to do, honestly, but it'll be more heavy lifting at that level. Anyway, so now that you have your vocabulary list with the either translation into your native language or the definition written out in the target language, you can now go back to the original article and start reading it. Usually news articles are written in short paragraphs. So what you could do is read it paragraph by paragraph. So you'll take the first paragraph, you'll read it. If there are any new vocabulary words in there for you, you will just refer to your list to help you understand how it's used. If you come across an expression you don't know, you can then add that to your list on the side. This will be like a phrase list or an expression list, an idiom list, things like that. In English, at least, we tend to use those quite frequently in news articles as well, because they carry a lot of meaning and they can pack a punch, which sounds really good in writing. Again, if you don't know what it means, you'll make a list for those too, and you can look those up separately. So anyway, you'll go through paragraph by paragraph. After each paragraph, what I want you to do is paraphrase what you read. So when you paraphrase, you use your own words to say what the writer said or what the speaker said. So in this case, you're not going to use the same words that the journalist wrote on the page, because we don't want you carbon copying the text. We want you to be starting to use your own creativity and what vocabulary you have available to you to restate what you understood. So do that paragraph by paragraph. What I will say with this vocabulary list that you just made, some of those words will probably end up, when you paraphrase, into the text that you're writing, but I wouldn't overuse them. I would use some of them as needed. The reason I say this again is we do not want to be copying what the other person wrote. We want to be using our own ability. And if this means that sometimes we use some of these new words for practice and they just make sense in that context, that's great. But I really strongly advise against not over relying on that vocabulary list, because if you do, you're gonna just end up copying, and that is not the point of this activity. The point is to understand what somebody else wrote and then restate it yourself using your own words to ensure that you actually understood it. So you'll go through paragraph by paragraph like this, and then once you're all finished, what you can do is read your paraphrased article. And then you can go back and you can read the original text again. And what is most likely to happen is once you read the full text of the original all the way through, it's likely to make total sense to you. And you're probably gonna feel pretty good about yourself, like, oh, I get it, this is nice, I fully understand this. Depending on how fluent you are in the language and how long the article is that you're working with, this could go by, say, in a half an hour, or this could take you more than an hour. Again, it really depends on the article and your level. If you're a lower level, more beginner to intermediate area, this is going to take long if you have a really long article. So it might be wise to start with shorter articles to begin with. If you're a more advanced student and you want to use a short article because you're short on time, that's totally fine. The practice is definitely worth it. But it sounds like you might be at a point where you can handle more advanced or longer material, so go for it to challenge yourself. Now, when this is all done, all the paraphrasing is done, what you can also then do is write a summary of the article that you read. If it is a standard size article, kind of short, it takes, say, a native speaker a few minutes to read it, you could probably summarize it in 3 to 5 sentences. This is really good to practice brevity. So saying what this journalist said in a very short way. So that way, if somebody looked at the article and they were like, I don't have time to read this, but they saw 3 sentences about it, they might read the 3 sentences to get the gist of what it is. If the article is longer, you're gonna need more than 3 sentences. You may need as many as 10 or 20. It really depends on the length of the thing. You're the one choosing the article, so I'll leave it up to you to decide how many sentences you need to summarize it. But remember, in a summary, we're trying to be very brief in telling the main point of what it said. So that is what you could use for news articles that are written. It tends to be a really useful language learning technique. It's something that you can do on your own. What I really like about it is because it's self-directed, you decide what you're reading, you create your own vocabulary list, so nobody is pushing anything on you. You decide what it is. And when you're finished with it, you probably will have a list of at least 10 words, I would gather, for most people in the learning process. And then these are words that you can then do vocabulary building activities with to reinforce your usage of those words. Because it's one thing to learn a word and just know what it means so you can get through a specific task, a specific project. It's another thing to continue to practice using those vocabulary words and also the phrases that you wrote down, so that way you can start integrating them into your own writing and speech. So I hope these tips were helpful for you. If they were, give it a like. I would also love to hear if you've tried this before and how it goes for you, and if there's anything else that you do with written news articles that you find extremely helpful. Definitely leave that in the comments below. So in the next video, what I will do is I will go through this whole technique and show you through an example. So I hope to see you in the next one. Have a good day, evening, night, whatever it is for you. And I will see you soon. Bye.